The fabric of the afterlife did not merely bend, it shattered under the weight of a biological android's desperation and a child's awakening rage. The combined energy of the solar Kamehameha and the father-son counterattack created a friction point where the temperature scale ceased to function, and the math of existence simply surrendered. It was not just energy, it was will made manifest massive quantities of ki stripping the electrons from the air until the atmosphere itself became plasma. Gohan, 11 years old and vibrating with the potency of a Super Saiyan 2, pushed his hands forward, not thinking about dimensions or cosmology, but about the dead silence of Android 16 and the echoing voice of his father urging him to let go. He poured everything into the beam. The recoil broke the tectonic plate beneath his feet, but the forward momentum broke something far more fundamental. The barrier between realities, designed to keep distinct cosmologies separate, dissolved like wet paper in acid. In the supernatural universe specifically, in a suppression ward within the deepest pit of hell, intended to hold an archangel, the structural integrity of the cage rattled for the first time in millennia. Lucifer paused in his pacing, his head tilting as if listening to a frequency that predated the creation of man. Up on Earth, inside a bunker that did not officially exist, a map table lit up with anomalies that defied geological explanation. In a motel room in Kansas, Castiel dropped a silver blade as a sound like a breaking spine rang out across every radio frequency on the planet simultaneously. It was a sonic boom that originated from nowhere and everywhere, a scream of reality being forced open by something that exceeded its carrying capacity. The sky over a desolate stretch of Nebraska turned a violent, impossible gold. It was not the warm sun of a summer afternoon, but the harsh, blinding radiance of a star screaming in agony. Clouds evaporated instantly, leaving a void of azure sky that looked wrong, as if the pigment had been burned away. The boy fell through the wound in the sky. He did not drift. He plummeted, surrounded by arcs of bioelectricity that tasted like ozone and copper. The cornfield below him did not stand a chance. The impact did not create a crater. In the traditional sense, it displaced the earth, creating a shockwave that flattened 300 acres of crop and shattered the windows of a gas station 4 miles away. Dust rose in a mushroom cloud that looked uncomfortably like a nuclear detonation, triggering alarms at NORAD and sending seismic needles dancing in disjointed rhythms across the Midwest. The local reality, which operated on the subtle laws of magic soul transactions and Judeo-Christian hierarchy, convulsed. This was not a demonic omnity or an angelic smiting. It was raw, unrefined life force, so dense it felt like a gravitational singularity. In the center of the devastation, the golden light flickered and died, leaving only steam and the smell of scorched earth. Gohan lay curled in the fetal position, his gi torn to shreds, his left arm hanging limp and useless, the purple sash gone. The golden aura that had defined him seconds ago sputtered out, leaving a child small and broken amidst the ruin. He was unconscious, his breathing shallow, his chi reserves drained to a level that would kill a normal human 10 times over. But the air here was different. It felt thick, heavy with sulfur and ancient rusted magic. He was no longer on the earth that the Dragon Balls protected. He was in a world where monsters hid in the dark and gods were petty bureaucrats, and right now, every single one of them felt the arrival of a predator they could not categorize. The silence that followed the crash was heavier than the explosion. It was the silence of a predator ecosystem, realizing something new had just entered the food chain, something that did not play by the rules of salt iron or holy water. A few miles away, a black 1967 Chevrolet Impala roared down the highway, its driver gripping the wheel with white knuckles, unaware that the apocalypse he was trying to prevent had just been rendered obsolete by an alien child who had punched a hole through God's architecture just to kill a bug. The universe had not just been breached, it had been infected by a power it had no immune response for. Dean Winchester slammed the driver's side door of the Impala, and the sound was swallowed instantly by the unnatural stillness that hung over the Nebraska plains. The air tasted of copper and burning hair, a scent that usually accompanied a demon incursion, but magnified 1,000 times until it coated the back of the throat like soot. Sam was already out of the car, moving toward the lip of the crater with the EMF meter in his hand, though the device was currently screaming a high-pitched whine that sounded less like a reading and more like the machine was dying in agony. The cornfield that had been there 10 minutes ago was simply gone, replaced by a vast concave depression of glassed earth that smoked in the twilight. It looked less like an impact site and more like the ground had been scooped out by a spoon made of pure thermal energy. There were no flames, just a residual heat that made the horizon ripple and shimmer. Dean checked his weapon, checking the chamber of the jagged silver-loaded pistol, even though his gut told him bullets were going to be about as useful here as a squirt gun against the devil. He looked at Sam, who was staring down into the pit, with a grimace of confusion etched into his face. The meter in Sam's hand sparked once and died, the plastic casing melting slightly from an invisible output of radiation that wasn't nuclear, but something else entirely. Dean walked up beside him and looked down. In the center of the glassy bowl, a small figure lay crumpled in the dirt. It was small, too small to be the source of a blast that had registered on seismographs as far away as Denver. But there it was. Smoke curled off the body. Dean squinted, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. It looked like a kid wearing purple rags and looking like he had gone 10 rounds with a wood chipper. Sam slid down the embankment, his boots crunching on the crystallized soil. Dean followed, keeping his gun trained on the figure, not out of malice, but out of the hard, learned habit that in their line of work the most innocent-looking things were often the ones that ate your liver. The heat grew more intense as they descended a dry oven-like pressure that made the sweat evaporate instantly from their skin. When they reached the bottom, the silence was heavy enough to crush a man. Sam knelt beside the boy, hovering his hands over the body without touching it. The kid was a mess. His left arm was twisted at a sickening angle, dark bruises purpling the skin that wasn't covered in dried blood. His clothes were shredded, revealing cuts and lacerations that looked like they had been inflicted by razors. But it was the feeling coming off him that made Dean take a step back. It wasn't the cold slime of a demon or the static charge of an angel. It was a vibration. The kid was vibrating, not shaking from cold, but humming like a high-tension wire carrying too much voltage. It felt like standing next to a generator that was about to explode. Sam looked up at Dean, his eyes wide with a mixture of concern and professional terror. He said that the kid was alive, but barely. The heartbeat was slow, too slow, and heavy. Every time the kid's heart beat, Dean could feel a thump in the soles of his boots, like a subwoofer hitting a low note. There was a flutter of wings that displaced the air behind them, and Castiel appeared, his trench coat settling around him. The angel usually arrived with a sense of detached authority, but this time he stumbled. Castiel actually stumbled, clutching his head as if someone had driven a spike through his temple. Dean grabbed the angel's arm to steady him, asking what was wrong. Castiel looked at the boy in the crater, and his eyes were filled with a profound and alien fear. He whispered that he could not see the boy, He corrected himself, saying he could see the physical vessel, but there was no soul. There was no emptiness either. It was a blind spot, a void of such density that it hurt to look at with true eyes. Castiel said it felt like a star compressed into human shape. He warned them not to touch him. He said the vessel was unstable. Dean ignored him because that was what Dean did. He holstered his gun and knelt down, reaching out to check the kid's neck for a pulse. The moment Dean's skin brushed against the boy's neck, a shockwave threw him backward 10 feet. It wasn't an attack, it was a reflex. The boy's eyes snapped open. They were teal green, violently bright and dilated with the panic of a soldier who wakes up in a trench. Gohan sat up. The movement was a blur. 1 second he was flat on his back, the next he was in a crouch, his good hand pressed against the dirt, his damaged arm hanging limp. He didn't look at Dean or Sam. He looked at the sky. He screamed a name that neither of them recognized. He screamed for his father. The sound was guttural, broken and terrified. The air around the boy ignited. A golden aura flared to life surrounding him like a jagged flame. The heat in the crater spiked instantly, turning the glass beneath his feet into the molten slag. Dean scrambled back, shielding his face from the glare. The light wasn't holy. It was aggressive. It crackled with bioelectricity that arced out and struck the ground, leaving scorch marks. Sam shouted, trying to get the kid's attention, trying to use the voice he used on scared victims. He told the kid he was safe. He told him they were there to help. Gohan whipped his head around, and for the first time he really saw them. But he didn't see 2 hunters in flannel and an angel in a trench coat. Through the haze of his concussion and the adrenaline dump of the cell games, he saw targets. He saw threats. His Ki senses were screaming at him, but the data was wrong. These men had no energy. Their power levels were microscopic, less than 5. They were dust. And yet the one in the coat felt strange, ancient, but weak. Gohan backed away, stumbling as his legs threatened to give out. He demanded to know where Cell was. He spoke in Japanese at first, then switched to a rough, accented English that sounded like he had learned it from textbooks. He asked where the monster was. He asked if his dad had done it. Dean stood up, hands raised, trying to de-escalate the situation, but the golden fire around the kid was getting brighter. The ground began to shake. Pebbles levitated into the air, defying gravity, suspended by the sheer pressure of the energy leaking from the boy's body. Castiel stepped forward, his angel blade sliding into his hand from his sleeve. He told Dean to get back. He said the entity was charging up. Gohan saw the blade. In his mind, it was another trick, another android weapon. He didn't think. He reacted. He vanished. To Dean and Sam, he simply ceased to exist in one spot and reappeared directly in front of Castiel. The angel was faster than humans, but Gohan was moving at a speed that defied the laws of physics governing the supernatural universe. Even injured, even exhausted, Gohan was a creature of hypervelocity combat. He grabbed Castiel's wrist. The angel blade stopped inches from Gohan's face. Castiel's eyes widened. He possessed the strength of a celestial garrison. He could lift cars, he could punch through concrete walls. But his arm would not move. The boy's grip was like a hydraulic clamp. Gohan looked at the angel with confusion. He sensed no Ki, just a weird static. He pushed. Castiel was launched backward out of the crater. He didn't just fly back, he broke the sound barrier. The sonic boom shattered the windows of the Impala parked on the ridge above. Castiel hit the atmosphere and vanished into the twilight, leaving a trail of displaced air. Dean stared slack-jawed. He looked at the kid, who was now swaying dangerously. The golden aura flickered and died. The boy's eyes rolled back in his head. The adrenaline was gone, leaving only the catastrophic damage of his battle with Cell. He collapsed face forward into the dirt. Sam was the first to move, running to the boy's side. Dean was right behind him, shouting at Sam to be careful. Sam checked the kid again. The heat was fading, but the body was still incredibly dense. Trying to lift him was like trying to lift a statue made of lead. He wasn't heavy in terms of mass, but he felt anchored to the world in a way that normal people weren't. They managed to drag him up the side of the crater, grunting with the effort. They got him into the back seat of the Impala. Dean looked around for Castiel, but the angel was gone, likely knocked into the next county. He swore under his breath and jumped into the driver's seat. He told Sam to keep the gun on the kid. Sam looked at the unconscious, battered child and told Dean that a gun wasn't going to do anything if the kid woke up. Dean gunned the engine and peeled out, leaving the smoking crater behind them. They needed a bunker. They needed sigils. They needed whiskey. The drive to the nearest safe house was a nightmare of tension. Every bump in the road made Dean flinch, expecting the kid to wake up and vaporize the car. Sam sat in the back, pressing a towel against the boy's bleeding head. He noticed things that didn't make sense. The blood was red, but it was hot. It steamed slightly on the towel. The bruises on the boy's chest were healing before his eyes, shifting from black to yellow in minutes. But the left arm was bad. The bone was shattered. Sam tried to set a splint, but the muscle was too hard. It was like trying to mold steel. He told Dean that they couldn't treat him. The needle wouldn't pierce the skin. He had tried to give the kid a sedative from the emergency kit, but the needle had bent. Dean looked in the rearview mirror, his eyes hard. He said they weren't going to a hospital. They were going to the panic room at Bobby's salvage yard. It was the only place with enough iron and devil's traps to hold whatever this was. Even if he wasn't a demon, better safe than sorry. Meanwhile, in the darkness of the Impala's back seat, Gohan dreamt. He dreamt of the beam struggle. He felt the ghost of Goku's hand on his shoulder. He felt the overwhelming guilt of his arrogance. He had played with Cell. He had let it go too far. And now he was alone. The voices in the dream were distorted. Piccolo wasn't there. Krillin wasn't there. Just the roar of the engine and the smell of old leather and stale coffee. He drifted in a void that felt suffocatingly small. The other world was supposed to be vast. This felt like a closet. The spiritual pressure of this universe was weak. It felt thin, fragile, like if he pushed too hard, he would break the walls. He instinctively clamped down on his power, pulling it deep into his core, trying to make himself small. He was a predator hiding in a house of glass. They arrived at the salvage yard under the cover of darkness. The dogs didn't bark. They whimpered and hid under the porch. Animals knew. Dean parked the car, and they hauled the boy into the house, down the stairs, and into the panic room. The room was solid iron, inscribed with every warding sigil known to man. Protection against possession, exorcism, rights Enochian warding against angels. Dean slammed the heavy iron door and spun the wheel, locking them in. He breathed a sigh of relief. Nothing supernatural could get in or out of this room. It was the safest place on Earth. He was wrong, of course. The panic room was designed to block magic and spiritual possession. It was not designed to block biophysical energy capable of destroying solar systems. Gohan was not a ghost. He was a biological entity with the power output of a quasar. The iron walls meant nothing to him physically, but for now he was unconscious, so the illusion of safety held. Sam set up a cot and they laid Gohan down. Dean paced the small room, checking the ventilation. He asked Sam what the hell they were dealing with. Sam didn't have an answer. He was looking at the boy's clothes. The purple fabric was high quality, weirdly woven. The sash was gone, But the boots were strange too. Soft leather, distinct design. Not military, not civilian. It looked like a uniform. Sam pointed out the symbol on the back of the torn GI. A kanji. He didn't read Japanese, but he memorized the shape. He said the kid was a fighter. Look at the knuckles, calloused, flattened. Look at the scars. This kid had been fighting his whole life. Dean scoffed, saying the kid looked like a mathlete who got mugged. But he couldn't deny the fear he had felt in the crater. That gold light. It wasn't just light. It was pressure. Castiel fluttered back into existence in the corner of the room. He looked disheveled. His tie was askew, and there was dirt on his face. He stared at Gohan with a mixture of wariness and fascination. Dean asked if he was okay. Castiel nodded slowly. He said he had landed in Iowa. He had flown back. He said the boy's strength was not magical. It was physical, but amplified by a life force that Castiel had never encountered. He said the boy did not tap into the ambient magic of the universe. He generated his own. He was a closed system, a reactor. Castiel warned them that the warding on the room would be useless if the boy decided to leave. The iron would crumple like tinfoil. Dean asked if they should kill him. It was a practical question. If this thing woke up and decided to finish destroying Nebraska, they couldn't stop it. Sam stepped in immediately, saying no. He was a child, a scared, hurt child. They didn't kill children, not unless they were black-eyed and unspooling intestines. Castiel moved closer to the cot. He reached out a hand and hovered it over Gohan's chest. He closed his eyes, searching. He said the boy was dying, not from the injuries they could see, but from exhaustion. His life force was critically low. He was burning himself out to keep his body functioning. Castiel said he could try to heal the physical injuries, but the energy drain was beyond him. He touched Gohan's forehead. A soft white light emanated from Castiel's palm. Usually, this light knit flesh and mended bone in seconds. This time, the light touched Gohan's skin and fizzled. It was like pouring water on a hot skillet. The boy's natural resistance, his Kai barrier, even in sleep, was rejecting the foreign grace. Castiel frowned and pushed harder. He concentrated, channeling the power of heaven. The room began to vibrate. The light intensified. Gohan groaned. His body arched off the cot. The conflict between the angelic grace and the Saiyan Ki created a localized static discharge. Sparks flew from the cot, hitting the iron walls. The light bulbs in the panic room exploded. Dean tackled Sam, covering his head. Castiel was thrown back again, hitting the wall with a clang. In the darkness, only the faint golden glow of the boy's hair provided illumination. He was floating inches above the cot. His eyes were closed, but his face was twisted in pain. He was muttering again. Senzu. Need. Senzu. The body lowered slowly back down. The broken arm was straighter now, but not healed. The cuts had closed, but the scars remained. Castiel stood up, straightening his coat. He looked shaken. He said the boy's soul, if it could be called that, was incredibly dense. It was like trying to heal a mountain. He had managed to stabilize the immediate trauma, but the boy needed rest. Lots of rest. And food. Castiel looked at Dean. He said the boy's metabolic rate was accelerating. He would need to consume a massive amount of calories to repair the damage. Dean looked at the unconscious kid, then at the exploded light bulbs. He asked how much food. Castiel said he didn't know, but he suggested they start with everything in the house. Sam went upstairs to scavenge. Dean sat in the folding chair gun in his lap, watching the kid. He felt a headache coming on. This was supposed to be a quiet week, maybe a salt and burn, maybe a vampire nest. Instead, they had an alien nuke in the basement who looked like a middle schooler and could throw angels into different time zones. Dean looked at the kanji on the kid's back again. He wondered who the hell trained a kid to be a weapon like that. He thought about his own dad. He thought about the way John Winchester had raised them. Soldiers, weapons. He felt a sudden, unexpected pang of sympathy for the glowing kid. An hour passed. Gohan slept the deep coma-like sleep of the Saiyan healing trance. Upstairs, Sam was cooking. Or rather, he was emptying cans into a pot. Downstairs, the silence was broken only by the hum of the ventilation. Then Gohan woke up. This time, there was no explosion, no screaming. He just opened his eyes and sat up. He looked at Dean. Dean looked at him. They stared at each other for a long moment. Gohan's eyes were dark now, the teal gone replaced by a deep obsidian black. He looked younger without the gold hair, more vulnerable. He looked at his arm, which was now in a sling Sam had fashioned. He looked at the iron walls. He looked at the devil's trap painted on the floor. He didn't know what it was, but he sensed the intent. Confinement. "Where am I?" Gohan asked. His voice was raspy. The English was better this time, controlled. "South Dakota," Dean said, keeping his voice even. "You're safe. You took a hell of a fall." Gohan frowned. "South Dakota? Is that near West City?" Dean shook his head. "Never heard of it. You're in the US of A, kid. Earth." Gohan looked confused. "I know I'm on Earth, but the energy, it's gone." "What energy?" "Everyone. Trunks, Vegeta, Piccolo. I can't feel them." Gohan's breathing hitched. "I can't feel my dad." Dean saw the panic rising again. He leaned forward. "Hey, easy. You're banged up. You need to chill before you blow the lights out again." Gohan looked at his hands. "I didn't mean to. I fell." "Yeah, you fell," Dean said. "You fell hard. Who are you?" "Son Gohan." "Son Gohan," Dean repeated. "Okay, Gohan. I'm Dean. My brother Sam is upstairs making food. And the guy in the coat who you tossed into Iowa is Castiel." Gohan looked down ashamed. "I hurt him. I thought he was an enemy. He's tough. He'll live. He tried to heal you." Gohan touched his chest. "Heal me? With magic?" "Something like that." Gohan looked at the iron walls again. "This room, it's strong, but not strong enough." Dean raised an eyebrow. "Strong enough for what?" "To hold me if I lose control again," Gohan said softly. He looked at Dean with eyes that had seen too much death for an 11-year-old. "You should let me go. I'm dangerous." "We deal with dangerous," Dean said. "It's kind of our job." "Not like this," Gohan said. I destroyed a monster, but I think I broke something else too." Sam came down the stairs carrying a tray with a pot of stew and a loaf of bread. The smell hit Gohan, and his stomach let out a roar that was almost as loud as the explosion in the cornfield. The tension in the room broke instantly. Gohan blushed, turning red. Dean actually smirked. Sam set the tray down on the small table. Gohan looked at it, then at them, asking permission with his eyes. Sam nodded. Gohan ate. He didn't eat like a human. He ate like a starving wolf. The stew was gone in seconds. The bread vanished. He looked at the empty pot, then at Sam. "Is there more?" Sam blinked. I can make more." "Please," Gohan said. "My body, it needs fuel." While Sam went back upstairs, Dean watched Gohan wipe his mouth. The kid was polite. Dangerously powerful, but polite. That was a weird combo. Usually the things that could level cities were screaming about ruling the world or eating souls. This kid just wanted seconds. "So," Dean said, "you said you broke something. What did you break?" Gohan looked at the devil's trap on the floor. He traced the lines with his eyes. The sky. I was pushing back a wave of energy. It was too much. The world cracked. I fell through the crack. Dean processed this. Multiverse, he muttered. Great, like we didn't have enough problems with this verse. I need to go back, Gohan said. My mother is waiting. She'll be worried. We'll figure it out, Dean lied. He had no idea how to figure it out. But first, you need to heal. And we need to know that if you step out of this room, you aren't going to turn into a glowing torch again. I can control it, Gohan said. I'm calm now. Good, Dean said. Stay calm. Because out there's people who would love to get their hands on a kid who can catch angel blades. Suddenly Gohan stiffened. He looked up at the ceiling, his eyes narrowing. Someone is coming, he said. Dean looked at the door. No one knows we're here. I feel them, Gohan said. Dark energy, cold, malicious, lots of them. Dean stood up, drawing his gun. Demons. I don't know the word, Gohan said, but they feel like slime. Upstairs, the sound of glass breaking echoed down the stairwell. Then the sound of a struggle. Sam shouted, then silence. Dean was at the door in a second, spinning the wheel. Gohan was off the cot. Stay here, Dean ordered. My brother is up there, Dean said. I can help, Gohan said. You're hurt. I can still fight, Gohan said. His voice changed. The politeness vanished, replaced by a steel edge. And you can't beat them. Their power, it's strange, but I can hit them. Dean hesitated. Then he threw the door open. He ran up the stairs, Gohan following close behind. The salvage yard house was swarming. Black smoke poured through the vents, coalescing into figures with black eyes. Demons, a dozen of them. They had Sam pinned to the kitchen wall, one of them holding a knife to his throat. They stopped when Dean entered, grinning. Winchester, the leader hissed. And the prize. They looked at Gohan. The demons could sense the power too. It radiated off him like a beacon. Hell wanted it. The king wants the battery, the demon said. Dean raised his gun. Come and get it. The demon laughed. He flicked a hand and Dean was flung across the room, slamming into the refrigerator. The gun slid away. Sam struggled, but the demons held him fast. The leader stepped toward Gohan. Come here, boy. We have so much fun planned for you. Gohan didn't move. He stood in the hallway, his left arm in the sling, his right hand clenched into a fist. He looked at the demon. He didn't look impressed. Let him go, Gohan said. Or what? The demon sneered. Gohan didn't power up. He didn't turn gold. He didn't need to. He simply moved. He stepped inside the demon's guard, moving faster than the demon's synapses could fire. He placed his hand on the demon's chest. Kiai, Gohan whispered. An invisible cannonball of air pressure blasted the demon. It didn't just knock him back. It disintegrated the host body's torso. The black smoke screamed as it was shredded by the concussive force, unable to maintain cohesion. The remains of the meat suit hit the back wall with a wet slap. The other demons froze. They had never seen a demon killed by a shove. The ruby knife killed. The colt killed. Angel blades killed. But this was brute force applied with surgical precision. Gohan looked at the others. His eyes were cold. Leave. The demons looked at the boy, then at each other. They roared and charged. Dean watched from the floor as the room became a blur of violence. Gohan fought with one arm. He dodged claws, he ducked under swings, he weaved through the black smoke like water. Every strike he landed was a finisher. A palm strike to a chin that snapped a neck. A kick to a knee that shattered the joint. He wasn't using ki blasts. He was using martial arts refined by masters and honed against tyrants. He was efficient, brutal, and he was protecting Sam. He pulled Sam out of the grip of a demon and shoved him behind the counter, all while kicking another demon through the window. Within 30 seconds, the kitchen was silent. Bodies lay everywhere. The black smoke had fled the broken vessels escaping through the cracks. Gohan stood in the center of the carnage, breathing heavily. He swayed. The exertion had cost him. The adrenaline crash was coming back. Dean got up, rubbing his ribs. He looked at the kid. He looked at the bodies. "Okay," Dean said. "You're hired." Sam stood up, looking pale. "Dean, those were high-level demons." "I know," Dean said. "And Karate Kid here just dusted them without breaking a sweat." Gohan slumped against the counter. "I need more food." Dean laughed a short, sharp sound of disbelief. Yeah, okay. We'll get you a cow. Or two." He looked at Gohan with a new respect and a new fear. The kid was a weapon. And now hell knew he was here. The clock was ticking. They couldn't stay at Bobby's. They had to move. The breach in the sky had dropped a stone into the pond, and the ripples were just getting started. Dean realized with a sinking feeling that the apocalypse they had been fighting was about to get sidelined by something much, much louder. The war for the world had just changed players. The black impala cut through the night like a shark through dark water, putting miles between the smoking ruin of the Singer salvage yard and the entity sitting in the back seat. Dean drove with a focus that bordered on mechanical, checking the rear-view mirror every 6 seconds. The adrenaline of the demon raid had faded, leaving behind a cold, tactical dread. They had a passenger who could punch the air hard enough to disintegrate matter, but who was currently shivering under a wool blanket, looking for all the world like a traumatized abuse victim. Sam sat in the passenger seat, twisting his body to watch the boy. Gohan was pale. The golden fire was gone, and with it the aura of invincibility. What remained was a child whose metabolism was currently consuming itself. Gohan held a bag of burgers they had bought at a drive-through 40 miles back. He ate them methodically, wrapper and all on the first two, before Sam gently corrected him. It wasn't gluttony. It was desperate biological refueling. The sound of chewing was the only noise in the car over the low rumble of the engine and the tires on asphalt. Castiel had vanished again, scouting ahead, or perhaps reporting to a heaven that was currently in a state of civil war. The angel's absence made the car feel smaller. Dean broke the silence, his voice rough with fatigue. He asked how the kid was doing without taking his eyes off the road. Sam replied that Gohan's temperature was running at 105 degrees. In a human, that was a hospital trip. In a Saiyan hybrid, it was apparently a sign of systemic failure. Gohan wiped grease from his mouth and apologized. He said his body wasn't absorbing the nutrients efficiently. He said the food here was dead. It had no energy. Sam frowned, asking what he meant. Gohan explained that in his world, food grown in the earth carried a trace of the earth's koi. It wasn't just calories, it was life force. Here the food felt hollow. It filled the stomach, but didn't refill the core. It was like eating paper. They pulled into a motel in a town that didn't deserve a name, just a cluster of lights off the interstate. The sign buzzed with a dying neon hum. Dean paid cash for a double room, his fake credit cards itching in his wallet, but he didn't dare leave a digital trail, not with hell hunting them. They shuffled Gohan into the room, which smelled of stale tobacco and industrial cleaner. The boy sat on the edge of the bed, his breathing shallow. The fight with the demons had cost him more than he had let on. Using Kai in a universe that didn't naturally generate it was like trying to breathe in a vacuum. He had used his own internal supply, and now the tank was empty. The vacuum was starting to pull at his tissues. Sam sat opposite him on the rickety chair, while Dean paced, checking the salt lines at the door and window. Sam asked Gohan to explain how his power worked. He needed to understand the mechanics if they were going to keep him alive. Gohan looked at his hands. He explained Kai. He described it not as magic, but as the latent energy of the body controlled by the mind. Courage, right-mindedness, physical conditioning. It was a fire that burned inside, but a fire needed oxygen. In his world, the atmosphere was rich with it. Here, the air was thin, spiritually inert. Gohan said he felt like he was suffocating, even though his lungs were full. He tried to sense for energy sources. He closed his eyes and reached out with his mind the way Piccolo had taught him. The reaction was immediate and violent. The motel room lights flared brighter than the sun for a microsecond, before exploding, showering the room in glass. The television screen cracked. Outside, a transformer on the pole down the street blew with a sound like a shotgun blast, plunging the block into darkness. Dean swore, drawing his gun instinctively. Gohan grabbed his head, screaming silently, his eyes squeezed shut. He hadn't found Ki. He had found the veil. In the Dragon Ball universe, the afterlife is a bureaucracy, a physical place one can teleport to. In the supernatural universe, the afterlife is a frequency layered over the real world, separated by a membrane of gossamer thin reality. Gohan's mind, sharpened by the intense psychic training of the Z fighters, had tried to punch through to find a beacon. Instead, he had slammed his consciousness into the wall of the dead. Sam grabbed Gohan's shoulders, shaking him. He shouted the boy's name. Gohan gasped, snapping back to reality. He looked terrified. He whispered that there were so many voices, millions of them, screaming, confused. He said they were right here, right next to them. He asked why the dead weren't crossing over. He asked why they were stuck. Sam exchanged a look with Dean. The kid had just brushed against the spirits trapped in the veil. Gohan's sensitivity was incompatible with the chaotic, unstructured purgatory of this reality. In his world, death was order. Here, death was a mess. The dissonance was hurting him. Dean lit a lantern from his duffel bag, casting long shadows against the peeling wallpaper. He told Gohan not to do that again. He said looking for a signal was like lighting a flare in a dark forest. It told everything with eyes exactly where they were. Gohan nodded, wiping blood from his nose. The nosebleed was dark, almost black. His body was breaking down. He needed a senzu bean, but those didn't exist here. He needed a healing tank. He needed his father. The isolation hit Gohan harder than the physical pain. He was 11 years old and he was completely and utterly alone in a universe that felt like a graveyard. Castiel appeared in the room. He didn't flutter in. He dropped in looking exhausted. His trench coat was singed. He looked at Gohan, then at Dean. He said they had to move. Now. Heaven had picked up the surge from Gohan's attempt to sense Kai. The garrison was mobilizing. Not just the foot soldiers. The Seraphim were involved. Zachariah was involved. Dean groaned, rubbing his face. He asked why the angels cared. They were supposed to be focused on the apocalypse. Castiel explained that Gohan represented a variable that the angels could not account for. He was an anomaly in the grand design. He wasn't in the prophet's gospel. He wasn't in the tablets. To the angelic mind which craved order and predestination, Gohan was a cancer, a glitch in the code of reality that had to be deleted before it corrupted the script. They scrambled to the car. Gohan stumbled his legs, refusing to support his weight. Dean carried him, throwing him into the back seat. Sam grabbed the weapons bag. They peeled out of the motel parking lot, just as a pillar of white light slammed into the roof of the room they had just vacated. The impact shook the ground, cratering the building. It wasn't a bomb. It was smiting. Pure, concentrated, divine wrath. Dean floored the accelerator, the Impala roaring in protest. He watched the rearview mirror. The light didn't fade. It resolved into shapes. 3 figures standing in the burning wreckage of the motel. They didn't run. They simply vanished and reappeared closer. The chase that followed was a nightmare of physics. The Impala was a fast car, but it couldn't outrun teleportation. The angels herded them. They weren't attacking the car directly yet. They were steering them, guiding them away from the town, away from witnesses, into the dark, empty expanse of the plains. They were moving the chessboard to a location where they could wipe the pieces without collateral damage. Dean realized it too late. He swerved onto a dirt road trying to break the pattern, but the road ended at a dried-up creek bed, miles from civilization. The car skidded to a halt, dust billowing around them. Dean killed the engine. Silence returned, heavy and absolute. He looked at Sam. He looked at Castiel. He said this was it. They were boxed in. Castiel exited the car, unfurling his angel blade. He stood in the headlights, a lone figure against the dark. Sam checked his demon killing knife, knowing it would be useless against angels, but needing the weight of it in his hand. Dean pulled a shotgun loaded with salt shells. It wouldn't kill them, but it might annoy them. Gohan opened the back door and fell out onto the dirt. He crawled to his feet, using the car for support. He looked at Castiel. "They're here for me," Gohan rasped. "Yes," Castiel said without turning. "Then I should fight them." "You cannot," Castiel said. "You have no energy. You are a husk. If you engage them, you will die." "If I don't," Gohan said, standing up straighter, despite the pain, "you will die." The 3 angels materialized in a triangle formation surrounding the car. The leader was a man in a sharp business suit, with eyes that looked like they had seen the birth of stars and hadn't been impressed. It was Uriel, the specialist in wet work. He looked at Castiel with sneering contempt. He called Castiel a traitor and a pet. He looked at the Winchesters with boredom. Then he looked at Gohan. His expression changed. It became clinical. "The abomination," Uriel said. His voice echoed not just in the air but inside their skulls. "It does not belong. It strains the fabric of the creation." Dean stepped forward, shotgun raised. "Hey, Junkless, step off. The kid's with us." Uriel flicked a finger. Dean flew backward, smashing into the windshield of the Impala. The glass shattered. Dean rolled off, groaning, clutching his ribs. Sam lunged but was pinned to the ground by an invisible force, gravity increasing tenfold on his body. Castiel charged. He met Uriel in a clash of blades that sparked with blue-white grace. But Castiel was cut off from heaven and Uriel was a specialist. Uriel caught Castiel's arm, twisted it with a sickening crunch and slammed him into the dirt. He placed a boot on Castiel's throat. Gohan watched. He saw his friends, people he had known for less than 24 hours but who had fed him and protected him, being broken. The anger started to rise. It was the old familiar feeling, the heat in the chest, the tightening of the throat. But this time there was no fuel to burn. He tried to summon the rage to trigger the transformation, but his cells were dry. He screamed a frustrated, broken sound. Uriel looked at him. Pathetic. A creature of such potential rendered impotent by the laws of physics. "You require energy to function, boy, and you have none." Uriel raised his hand. A ball of concentrated grace formed in his palm, brighter than magnesium. "I will unmake you. I will scour your atoms from this timeline." Gohan stared at the light. He thought of Cell. He thought of the Kamehameha. He needed energy. He needed it now. His body, screaming in survival mode, bypassed his conscious mind. It sought a source. It didn't find ki in the air. It didn't find ki in the food. But it found something else. Deep beneath the earth, running through the crust like veins, there were rivers of power. The Winchesters knew them as ley lines, the currents of the earth, Ancient magic, the blood of the planet. Gohan's senses locked onto the flow beneath his feet. It wasn't ki. It was raw, chaotic terrestrial power. But it was energy. Gohan didn't ask. He didn't meditate. He tore it open. He planted his feet and roared. It wasn't a battle cry. It was a suction. The ground beneath Gohan cracked. Not from an impact, but from a sudden loss of structural integrity. A vortex of blue light erupted from the soil swirling around the boy. He was drinking the ley line. Castiel's eyes went wide with horror. He shouted for Gohan to stop. He screamed that the energy was not meant for him, that it was the tether of the world. Gohan couldn't hear him. The rush was intoxicating. The pain vanished instantly, replaced by a surge of power that felt dirty, thick, and wild. It wasn't the clean golden fire of the Super Saiyan. It was a jagged blue-black aura that smelled of ozone and deep earth rot. His muscles swelled. His eyes turned entirely white. The energy of the ley line designed to sustain the ecosystem of the Great Plains was being forcibly metabolized by a biology designed to conquer planets. Uriel paused the ball of light in his hand, wavering. For the first time, the angel looked uncertain. "What are you doing?" Gohan didn't answer. He vanished. There was no sonic boom, just the sudden displacement of air. Gohan appeared in front of Uriel. He didn't punch him. He grabbed the angel's face. The interaction between the corrupted ley line energy and the angelic grace was catastrophic. Gohan didn't just hurt Uriel. He drained him. The Saiyan biology, confused by the foreign energy source and operating on starvation protocols, didn't distinguish between the Earth's magic and the angel's power. It took everything. Uriel screamed a sound that shattered the windows of the Impala completely. His vessel withered, turning to dust in seconds. The bright blue-white light of his grace was sucked into Gohan's palm, consumed like a sugary drink. The other two angels, realizing the hierarchy of power had just been violently inverted, tried to fly. Gohan swiped his hand. A wave of the dark blue energy lashed out like a whip. It bisected them. They didn't even have time to explode. Their grace was ripped from their vessels and pulled into the vortex swirling around the boy. Silence returned. But it was different now. Dean pulled himself up from the hood of the car. He looked at Gohan. The boy was standing in a crater. But the crater wasn't just dirt. The grass around it was dead, not burned. Grey, ash. The decay was spreading. Dean watched as the circle of death expanded outward, moving at the speed of a slow run. The bushes turned to dust. The trees near the creek bed withered and collapsed, their moisture evaporated instantly. Sam stood up, gasping. He looked at the EMF meter in the bag. It was dead, not broken, dead. There was no reading because there was no background radiation. "Gohan!" Sam shouted. The boy turned. His eyes were slowly returning to normal, fading from white to teal, then to black. The dark aura sputtered and died. Gohan looked at his hands. They were trembling. He looked at the dead angels. Then he looked at the ground. He fell to his knees. He vomited. A black ichor that hissed when it hit the dead soil. Castiel limped over, his face grim. He didn't offer comfort. He looked at the ground with the eyes of a surveyor assessing a disaster. "What did I do?" Gohan whispered. I needed power. I just took it." "You drank the ley line," Castiel said softly. "You drained it dry. Will it come back?" Gohan asked. Castiel looked out at the expanding circle of grey ash. It had stopped about a mile out, a perfect circle of necrotic earth where nothing would ever grow again. "No, ley lines are the arteries of the earth. You collapsed this one. This land is dead, spiritually and physically. Nothing will grow here. No spirits can traverse it. It is a wound in the world. Gohan stared at the desolation. He had saved them. He had killed the monsters. But the cost lay around him in a mile-wide scar of silence. He remembered the teachings of his father. To protect the earth, to cherish life. He had just eaten a piece of the planet to save his own skin. Dean walked over, kicking a clod of grey dirt that disintegrated into powder. He looked at the kid. He saw the horror in the boy's face. Dean knew that look. It was the look of a soldier who realizes that the weapon he used to kill the enemy also poisoned the village he was protecting. "We have to go," Dean said. His voice was hard. "More will come. And this," he gestured to the dead zone. "This is going to show up on every radar from here to the Vatican." "I'm sorry," Gohan wept. "I didn't know." "We know," Sam said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. But Sam's hand shook. He could feel the hollowness in the boy now. Gohan wasn't empty anymore. He was full, but he was full of something that felt wrong. Gohan had adapted. His Saiyan cells, the ultimate biological survivors, had learned a new trick. If they couldn't generate Kai, they would steal it. They would process matter, magic, grace, anything to keep the host alive. Gohan had become a siphon. They got back into the car. The engine turned over with a struggle, the battery drained by the ambient proximity to the void Gohan had created. As they drove away, leaving the circle of ash behind the sky above them, began to change. Clouds gathered dark and unnatural. Thunder rolled, but it didn't sound like thunder. It sounded like gears grinding. In the back seat, Gohan curled up. He felt full. He felt strong. But he also felt a gnawing hunger in the back of his mind. A hunger that whispered that the ley line hadn't been enough. That the angel's grace had been sweet. That he wanted more. He clamped his hands over his ears, trying to shut out the voice of his own survival instinct. He realized then that he hadn't just broken the world. He had broken himself. The hero of the Cell games was gone. In his place was something that the supernatural universe had forced him to become. A monster that ate the world to save it. Far away in a throne room decorated with bones and red velvet crewlay, the King of Hell swirled a glass of scotch. He looked at a map on the wall where a black spot had just appeared in Nebraska. "Interesting," Crowley purred. "Very interesting. It eats magic. It eats angels. And it hangs out with the Winchesters." He took a sip. "I wonder," he mused, "what happens if we feed it a demon? Does it get heartburn? Or does it get ambitious?" Crowley picked up the phone. "Get me the knights," he said. "All of them. We have a new player, and I want to see what he does when he's really hungry." The car drove on into the night, but the night felt darker now. The balance had shifted. The first irreversible catastrophe had occurred. The boy who was supposed to be a savior was now a walking ecological disaster, and the universe, which had tried to reject him, was about to learn that rejection only made him hungrier. The rules of engagement had changed. Physics had been violated. And somewhere deep in the cosmic architecture, a law was being rewritten to accommodate the predator in the back seat. The question was no longer if Gohan could survive the supernatural universe. The question was if the supernatural universe could survive Gohan. The interstate stretched out like a black ribbon cutting through the nothingness of the American Midwest. A landscape of shadow and wheat that seemed to recoil from the passing of the 1967 Chevrolet Impala. Inside the cabin, the air was thick enough to choke on. It was not merely the tension of men on the run, but a physical pressure radiating from the back seat, where Son Gohan sat with his knees pulled to his chest. He was no longer shivering. The fever that had consumed him after the incident at the motel had broken, but it had been replaced by a terrifying stillness. His eyes were open, staring at the back of Dean's head, but they were not seeing the leather upholstery. They were seeing the flow of electrons in the copper wiring of the car's dashboard. They were seeing the faint bioluminescent decay of the microscopic organisms on Sam's jacket. The consumption of the ley line and the grace of Uriel had not just refueled him, it had rewired his sensory input. He was seeing the world through the lens of a predator that ate reality. The hunger was gone, replaced by a buzzing static charge that made his hair stand on end, not in the golden spikes of a super saiyan, but in a drifting, weightless halo that defied gravity. Dean gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. The car felt heavy. The engine was working too hard, burning gas at twice the normal rate, as if the laws of combustion were struggling to function in the proximity of the anomaly in the back seat. Dean didn't speak. He couldn't. Every time he looked in the rearview mirror, he saw the kid's eyes. They weren't the innocent teal of before, and they weren't the demonic black. They were a shifting kaleidoscope of grey and blue, swirling like a storm cloud trapped in an iris. It was the color of the dead zone they had left behind in Nebraska. Dean knew monsters. He killed things with fangs, claws, and black eyes. But this was different. This was a kid who had looked at an angel of the Lord and eaten him. Dean felt a cold knot of fear in his stomach that had nothing to do with death and everything to do with the unknown. They were transporting a biological weapon that didn't come with an off switch. Sam sat with the laptop open on his knees, the screen casting a pale blue glow on his tired face. He was frantically scrolling through hunter forums, news feeds, and geological survey data. The news was bad. The dead zone was expanding. It wasn't moving fast, but it was creeping outward, a slow necrosis of the soil that was baffling scientists and terrifying the locals. The government had already set up a perimeter, claiming it was a chemical spill, but Sam knew the truth. It was a spiritual vacuum, and the chatter on the hunter networks was spiking. People were reporting storms that moved against the wind, cattle dying of fright in 3 states, signs of the apocalypse. But this wasn't the biblical apocalypse they had been fighting. This was something new. Sam looked back at GOHAN. The boy was looking at his own hands, flexing the fingers slowly. Small arcs of blue electricity jumped between his fingertips. It wasn't Kai. It was grace. Corrupted, broken, angelic grace that GOHAN's body was breaking down and repurposing as fuel. Castiel sat in the passenger seat, stiff as a board. He had not spoken since they fled the crater. He was cut off from heaven, a fugitive with a price on his head. But that wasn't what was bothering him. What bothered him was the sound. To an angel, the universe had a melody, a song of creation that hummed in the background of existence. GOHAN was a discordant note, a screech of feedback that drowned out the music. Castiel could feel the boy's metabolism digesting the power of Uriel. It was a blasphemy so profound it made Castiel nauseous. The boy was turning divine energy into biological mass. He was growing. His muscles were denser, his bones hardening. The universe was trying to crush him, and he was eating the universe to push back. Castiel knew that they could not run forever. The garrison would not stop. And worse, the empty space where Uriel used to be was a signal flare to every power player on the board. They crossed the state line into Wyoming as the sun began to rise. It was a bleed of grey light that offered no warmth. Dean pulled the Impala into a truck stop that looked like it had been carved out of a glacier. He needed coffee. He needed to stop moving for 5 minutes to stop his hands from shaking. He told GOHAN to stay in the car, to stay down. GOHAN nodded, his expression blank. He didn't argue. He didn't seem to care. He was listening to the hum of the power lines overhead, a sound that to him sounded like a dinner bell. Sam and Dean went inside, leaving Castiel to guard the car. The angel stood outside the door, his eyes scanning the horizon. He knew they were coming. He just didn't know who would get there first. Inside the diner, the smell of grease and old coffee was grounding. Dean ordered 4 blacks and a stack of pie. He looked at Sam. He asked if they had a plan. Sam didn't have a plan. He had a destination. The bunker. The Men of Letters headquarters in Lebanon, Kansas. It was the only place with shielding strong enough to hide GOHAN's signal. But it was days away, and they were driving a car that was being tracked by God and the devil. Sam pointed out that GOHAN was unstable. If he lost control in the bunker, he could wipe out the repository of all human supernatural knowledge. Dean countered that if they stayed out here, he would wipe out Wyoming. It was a choice between 2 disasters. They chose the one with a bed and a library. Back in the car, GOHAN watched a stray dog trot across the parking lot. The dog stopped, looked at the car, and whimpered. It tucked its tail and ran. GOHAN felt a pang of sadness that was instantly swallowed by the cold logic of his new instincts. Weakness fled from strength. It was a rule of nature. He closed his eyes and tried to meditate to find the center of his spirit, as Piccolo had taught him. But the center was gone. In its place was a swirling vortex of blue fire. He pushed into it, trying to find his own key, trying to separate the cyan energy from the stolen power. He found a thread of his own golden light, thin and fragile, deep in the core. He grabbed it. He pulled. The reaction was instantaneous. The windows of the Impala blew out, not inward, but outward, shattered by a sudden spike in internal pressure. The roof of the car buckled upward. Castiel was thrown 10 feet, landing in a snowbank. The car alarm blared a pathetic sound that was cut short as the battery exploded. Dean and Sam ran out of the diner, guns drawn. They saw the Impala smoking the glass, dusting the pavement. GOHAN was standing outside the car now. He looked confused. He looked at his hands. I just tried to focus, he stammered. His voice was deeper, resonant. Dean lowered his gun, but didn't holster it. You blew the windows out focusing. The energy, GOHAN said. It doesn't want to be held. It wants to be used. Well, don't use it, Dean snapped, inspecting the damage. Damn it, we can't drive a convertible in Wyoming in November. Castiel walked back, brushing snow from his coat. It is not safe here. He is leaking. Leaking? Sam asked. His containment field is porous, Castiel said. He is radiating power. It is acting like a beacon. How far? Dean asked. Global, Castiel said. Every sensitive being on the planet just felt that. As if on cue, the ground beneath them rumbled. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a subway train coming in fast directly under the asphalt. But there were no subways in Wyoming. The asphalt of the parking lot cracked. Steam hissed from the fissures, smelling of sulfur and rot. The shadows stretching from the diner elongated, detaching themselves from the building. They pooled together, forming a black viscous puddle that bubbled and boiled. Demons, Sam hissed, pulling the ruby knife. Not just demons, Castiel said, unfurling his blade. Something worse. From the black pool a figure rose. It wasn't smoke this time. It was flesh. A woman with red hair and a dress that belonged in the 1950s. She stepped out of the sludge, not a speck of dirt on her. She looked around, wrinkling her nose at the truck stop. She looked at the Winchesters with a smirk that promised pain. Then she looked at GOHAN. Her eyes flashed black, but it wasn't the standard demon black. It was the deep, ancient void of a night of hell. Abaddon, Dean said, his voice tight. Hello, boys, Abaddon purred. Crowley sent a legion to find the battery, but I thought I'd come collect it myself. Hard to find good help these days. She didn't wait for a witty retort. She raised a hand and clenched her fist. Dean, Sam, and Castiel were slammed against the side of the diner by a telekinetic wave that felt like a semi-truck. They were pinned there, struggling against the invisible weight. Abaddon walked toward GOHAN, her heels clicking on the cracked pavement. GOHAN stood his ground. He didn't take a fighting stance. He just watched her. He sensed her energy. It was dark, twisted, and incredibly old. It felt like the ley line, but conscious, malicious. "So you're the World Eater," Abaddon said, stopping a few feet from him. "You don't look like much, just a scrawny little thing." "Leave them alone," GOHAN said. Abaddon laughed. "Or what? You'll cry, 'I heard you ate Uriel.' Impressive, but angels are crunchy. I'm a little harder to chew." She lashed out, moving faster than a human could track. She backhanded GOHAN. It should have taken his head off. It was a blow meant to decapitate. GOHAN didn't dodge. He took it. His head snapped to the side. A small trickle of blood ran from his lip. He looked back at her. His expression hadn't changed. Abaddon frowned. She hit him again. A punch to the gut that would have caved in a tank. GOHAN skid back a few inches, his heels carving grooves in the asphalt. He coughed. "Is that it?" GOHAN asked. He wasn't mocking her. He was genuinely asking. Compared to Cell, compared to the androids, this physical force was manageable. Abaddon snarled. Her pride stung. She unleashed her full power. The black smoke erupted from her, pouring into the boy, trying to possess him, trying to invade his body and tear him apart from the inside. GOHAN felt the intrusion. He felt the cold slime of the demonic essence trying to slide into his nose and mouth, trying to seize his mind. But his mind was a fortress built by Piccolo and Goku, and his body was currently a reactor running on high-grade cosmic fuel. GOHAN didn't push the smoke out. He clamped down. He inhaled. The black smoke that was Abaddon's essence screamed. It wasn't a sound audible to the ears, but a psychic shriek that shattered the windows of the diner. GOHAN wasn't being possessed. He was digesting. Abaddon, panic-stricken, tried to withdraw. She tried to pull her essence back into her host body, but the gravity of GOHAN's core was too strong. He was a singularity. "No!" Abaddon screamed, her voice layering over itself. "What are you?" "I'm hungry," GOHAN whispered. The voice wasn't entirely his. It was the voice of the Uzaru, the great ape buried deep in his DNA, awakened by the taste of raw power. GOHAN grabbed Abaddon's wrist. The host body began to wither. The red hair turned grey. The skin desiccated. The immortality of the Knight of Hell was being stripped away, processed into raw calories. Dean, watching from the wall, felt a horror deeper than anything he had ever known. He had wanted GOHAN to win, but not like this. This wasn't fighting. This was feeding. "GOHAN, stop," Dean shouted. "You'll kill her." "That's the point, Dean," Sam yelled. "No, he's eating her soul," Dean screamed. "Don't do it, GOHAN. Don't let it in." The words penetrated the haze. GOHAN blinked. The blackness in his eyes receded slightly. He looked at the withered woman in his grip. He felt the vile, ancient evil of the Knight of Hell flowing into his veins, turning his blood to ice. It felt powerful, but it felt wrong. It felt like vomit. He released her. Abaddon fell to the ground, gasping a husk of her former self. She was alive, but diminished, terrified. She looked at the boy with pure, unadulterated fear. She scrambled backward, crawling through the snow, desperate to get away from the monster. GOHAN stood panting. His aura flared again. This time it was streaked with black veins. The demonic energy had mixed with the angel grace and the ley line power. He was becoming a chimera of supernatural forces held together by Siam biology. Go, Gohan said. Abaddon didn't need to be told twice. She abandoned the host body, exploding into a cloud of black smoke that fled into the sky faster than she had ever moved in her existence. The host body, a dead woman from the 50s, collapsed. The pressure holding the Winchesters released. They fell to the ground. Castiel was up, instantly checking the perimeter. Dean walked over to Gohan. He kept his distance. "You okay?" Dean asked. Gohan looked at his hands. The veins in his arms were black. "I wanted to finish it," he said softly. "I wanted to consume her. It felt good." "That's the dark side talking, kid," Dean said. "You fought it. That's what matters." "I don't know how long I can fight it," Gohan said. He looked up, tears in his eyes. "I'm turning into something else. My dad. He wouldn't recognize me." "We'll fix it," Sam said, stepping up. "We'll get to the bunker. We'll find a spell. We'll purge the energy." "We have to go," Castiel said urgently. "Abaddon's flight will have alerted every demon in the hemisphere. And Heaven is mobilizing the choir. They didn't bother with the Impala. It was dead. They hot-wired a truck from the parking lot, an old Ford pickup that smelled of manure and stale cigarettes. They piled in Gohan in the middle between Sam and Dean. They drove east, staying off the highways, sticking to the back roads. The silence in the cab was different now. It wasn't just fear. It was a shared complicity. They had seen the weapon fire, and they had seen it enjoy the kill. As they drove, the sky began to darken. It was mid-morning, but the sun was being blotted out. Not by clouds, but by wings, thousands of them. Invisible to the human eye, but glaringly obvious to Gohan and Castiel. "They're following us," Gohan said. "The angels. They're hurting us again," Castiel said. "They want us in the open." "Why don't they just attack?" Dean asked. "Because they are afraid," Castiel said. "They saw what happened to Uriel. They saw what almost happened to Abaddon. They know that if they engage him in close quarters, he will eat them. They are waiting for the heavy artillery." "What's heavy artillery for angels?" Sam asked. "Raphael," Castiel said. "The archangel. The healer. The destroyer. If he comes, he will not fight. He will simply scorch the earth for 100 miles around the target." The drive to Kansas became a blur of evasion. Gohan slept fitfully, his dreams invaded by the memories of the beings he had consumed. He saw the creation of the stars through Uriel's eyes. He felt the cold, damp dungeons of hell through the trace amounts of Abaddon's energy he had absorbed. He was losing his sense of self. He was Son Gohan, but he was also a legion. They reached Lebanon, Kansas 2 days later. The town was quiet. Too quiet. The Winchesters knew the signs. The civilians had been evacuated or silenced. They drove to the location of the bunker, the hidden entrance in the side of the hill. Dean parked the truck. "We're here." They got out. The air was electric. The hair on their arms stood up. "He's coming," Castiel said, looking up. The cloud swirled, forming a massive funnel directly over the bunker entrance. Lightning, blue and jagged, struck the ground around them. The pressure was immense. It forced Dean and Sam to their knees. A voice boomed from the sky. It wasn't sound. It was pure authority. The abomination must be purged. "Raphael." Gohan looked up. He felt the power. It was vast, infinite. It dwarfed Uriel. It dwarfed anything he had felt in this universe. It was comparable to Cell in his perfect form, maybe even stronger. "Get inside," Dean yelled, crawling toward the door. "He'll destroy the bunker if we go in," Sam shouted. "He'll crack the world to get to us." Gohan stood looking at the sky. The lightning was targeting him. He could feel the lock-on. I have to draw him away, Gohan said. No, Dean shouted. You run, you die. If I stay, you die, Gohan said. He didn't wait for permission. He bent his knees. The ground beneath him pulverized. He took off. He flew straight up into the funnel cloud. The Winchesters watched as a small golden blue streak collided with the storm. There was a flash of light that blinded them, a thunderclap that ruptured eardrums. Then silence. The clouds dispersed instantly. Gohan fell. He hit the ground 50 yards away, tumbling like a rag doll. He was smoking. His gi was gone, replaced by charred skin. Raphael had swatted him like a fly. The Archangel descended. He occupied a vessel, a mechanic in a grease-stained jumpsuit, but the light pouring from his eyes and mouth was blinding. His wings, massive and made of pure electricity, spanned the horizon. Raphael landed before the broken boy. He raised a blade that looked like it was made of starlight. You are a mistake, Raphael intoned. A biological error. I will correct you. Dean scrambled to his feet, running toward them. He fired his shotgun uselessly at the Archangel. Raphael didn't even blink. He swiped a hand and Dean was thrown back against the bunker door. Castiel charged, blade drawn. Raphael caught Castiel by the throat and slammed him into the earth. Disappointing, Castiel. You side with the virus. Raphael raised the blade to finish Gohan. Gohan looked up. He was broken. His ribs were crushed. His energy was gone. He had tried to fight an Archangel with a hunger pang and he had lost. He closed his eyes, waiting for the end. He thought of his mother. He thought of Goku. But the end didn't come. Because the bunker opened. The massive iron door groaned and swung inward. From the darkness of the bunker, a different kind of energy spilled out. It wasn't Kai. It wasn't grace. It was soul. The bunker was built on a power source. The accumulated knowledge and artifacts of the men of letters. It was a nexus of human will. Gohan's body, sensing the proximity of the energy, reacted. It didn't ask. It reached out. The latent energy of the bunker, the spells, the cursed objects, the ambient magic of 1,000 years of scholarship flowed out the door and into the boy. It wasn't a stream. It was a flood. Raphael paused, sensing the shift. Gohan's eyes snapped open. They were glowing. Not gold, not blue. They were purple, the color of pure magic. He didn't stand up. He levitated. The injuries on his body knit together not with biological healing, but with magical restructuring. You want to correct me? Gohan said. His voice echoed with the whispers of dead librarians. He raised his hand. A barrier formed between him and Raphael. A geometric construct of glowing purple lines. An Enochian warding sigil made manifest by pure force. Raphael struck the barrier. The blade shattered. The Archangel stepped back his vessel, showing fear for the first time. Impossible, Raphael hissed. You cannot wield the sigils. You have no soul. I have yours, Gohan said. He didn't attack. He expanded the field. The purple light washed over the hillside, enveloping the Winchesters, enveloping Castiel, enveloping the bunker entrance. Raphael tried to push through, but the light burned him. It was the power of man, the power of rejection of the divine. This is not over, Raphael roared. He ascended, fleeing into the upper atmosphere before the field could crush him. Gohan dropped to the ground. The purple light faded. He lay there panting. Dean and Sam ran to him. They checked him over. He was whole, but he was different, again. He looked at the bunker door. It called to me, Gohan whispered. The house. It wanted to help. The bunker, Sam said in awe. It's alive in a way, and you just tapped into it. We need to get inside, Dean said, helping Gohan up. Before he comes back with friends. They practically fell through the doorway into the cool metallic interior of the Men of Letters bunker. Dean spun the wheel, locking the heavy door. The thud of the bolts sliding home was the most beautiful sound in the world. They were safe, for now. But as they walked down the spiral staircase into the war room, Sam looked at Gohan. The boy was walking with a strange grace. He ran his hand along the railing, and the metal seemed to hum in response. Sam realized then that they hadn't just found a hideout. They had brought the battery to the generator. Gohan was plugged in now. The bunker had a defense system, and it was walking down the stairs, wearing a torn purple gi. The systemic clash had ended in a stalemate, but the escalation was permanent. Heaven had declared war. Hell was regrouping, and the Winchesters were trapped in a concrete box with a child who was rapidly becoming the most powerful sorcerer in existence simply by existing. Dean went to the map table. He poured a drink. He didn't offer one to the kid. "Welcome home," Dean said. He didn't smile. Gohan stood in the center of the library. He could feel the books. He could hear the whispers of the ink. He closed his eyes. He wasn't alone anymore. The silence of the dead zone was gone. Here there was noise, knowledge, power. And for the first time since he fell through the sky, Gohan smiled. It was a small, tired smile. But it was there. He was adapting. He was surviving. But deep down, buried under the layers of angel grace and demon smoke and human magic, the Saiyan cells were screaming. They were screaming that this wasn't right, that this was a crutch, that real power came from within, not from without. The conflict between Gohan the martial artist and Gohan the monster was just beginning, and the bunker was the perfect arena for the final round. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, the lights flickered as Gohan took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of old paper and ozone. He was ready. The silence within the Men of Letters bunker was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of a held breath. For 3 weeks, the underground complex had served as a monastery, a prison, and a laboratory for the entity that was Son Gohan. The boy sat at the long wooden table in the library, surrounded by stacks of books that would have taken a normal scholar a decade to consume. He read with a terrifying speed, his eyes scanning pages of Latin Sumerian and Enochian text, absorbing the syntax and the logic of magic, as if it were advanced calculus. To Gohan, this universe's magic system was simply another form of physics, a set of inputs and outputs that could be mastered through study and discipline. He was not just reading, he was integrating. The ambient energy of the bunker, which thumped with the heartbeat of the captive generator, and the residual will of the Men of Letters flowed through him in a constant low-level current. He had learned to filter it to separate the raw power from the emotional residue of the dead librarians. Dean Winchester leaned against the doorway, watching the kid. Gohan looked different. The torn purple GI had been washed and mended by Sam, but it hung loosely on him now. The boy had grown, not in height, but in presence. His muscle density had increased, the fibers adapting to the high gravity burden of containing multiple incompatible energy sources. But it was his face that worried Dean. The softness of the child was hardening into the stoic mask of a warrior monk. Gohan didn't laugh anymore. He didn't ask for burgers. He ate the nutrient-dense paste Sam concocted from the pantry supplies with mechanical efficiency. He was preparing for something. Dean took a sip of whiskey and walked into the room. He asked Gohan what he was looking for. Gohan didn't look up from a crumbling tome bound in human skin. He said he was looking for the frequency. Dean asked what frequency. Gohan explained that every dimension had a resonant frequency, a specific vibration that defined its existence. His world vibrated at a rate that allowed for the manipulation of ki. This world vibrated at a lower, denser rate that favored magic and soul transaction. If he could find the mathematical bridge, the harmonic interval between the two, he could open a door. Sam entered the room carrying a laptop and a sheet of papers. He looked tired. The stress of housing a world-ending anomaly was wearing on him. He placed the papers on the table next to GOHAN's book. He said he had cross-referenced the law with the data GOHAN had provided about the instant transmission technique. There was a theoretical possibility, the rift spell. It was a piece of obscure magic derived from the angel tablet capable of tearing a hole in the veil to step between worlds. But the requirements were astronomical. It required the grace of an archangel and a fruit from the tree of life. They had neither, but Sam hesitated. He looked at GOHAN. He said they didn't have the fruit, but GOHAN had the grace. He had consumed Uriel. And while Uriel wasn't an archangel, GOHAN's body had processed the energy, amplifying it through the Scion multiplier effect. The sheer density of power inside the boy might be a substitute for the specific quality of the spell components. It was a gamble, a massive, reckless gamble. GOHAN looked at the spell diagram. His mind raced, calculating the variables. He saw the geometry of the ritual. It was flawed. It relied on external gods to bridge the gap. GOHAN didn't trust gods. He trusted effort. He picked up a pen and began to redraw the sigils. He didn't draw them with ink. He burned them into the paper with a microscopic application of heat vision from his eyes. He altered the flow of the energy. He bypassed the invocation of deities and replaced it with a direct injection of his own life force. He created a closed loop, a self-powered gate. He looked at Sam and said it would work. He said he could feel his father's energy out there in the void, faint like a distant star. If he pushed hard enough, he could lock onto it. Dean slammed his glass down on the table. He said no. He said it was too dangerous. They didn't know what was in the space between worlds. They didn't know if opening a door would let GOHAN out or let something else in. He reminded them of the dead zone in Nebraska. He reminded them of the dead angels. He said they were playing with fire and they were soaked in gasoline. GOHAN looked at Dean. His eyes were calm, terrifyingly calm. He said he understood the risk, but he had to go. He said he was dangerous to this world. Every day he stayed, he ate more of its potential. He was a drain on the reality. Leaving was the only way to save them. Dean looked at the kid and saw the logic. It was the same logic Dean used. Sacrifice yourself to save the board. He hated it, but he couldn't argue with it. The decision was the small choice. To try, to light the match. It seemed logical, it seemed noble. But in the supernatural universe, noble intentions were the cobblestones of the road to hell. They decided to perform the ritual that night in the dungeon of the bunker, the deepest, most shielded point in the Western Hemisphere. They cleared the floor. GOHAN painted the modified sigils using a mixture of his own blood and the ash from the dead zone in Nebraska, which they had scraped from the wheel wells of the truck. The mixture hissed when it touched the concrete. The blood was potent. It carried the heavy isotopes of the consumed entities. As they prepared, the air in the bunker grew cold. The lights flickered. The warding on the walls began to glow a dull, angry red. The bunker itself was reacting, sensing the magnitude of the energy about to be released. Castiel had returned from his patrol looking grim. He watched the preparations with a sense of impending doom. He told Dean that this was a mistake. He said that tearing the veil was a sin against the natural order. Dean told him to stow the theology. They were sending the kid home. Castiel didn't argue further, but he kept his angel blade loose in his sleeve. He knew that if the boy turned, if the ritual corrupted him, he would have to try to kill him, and he knew he would fail. Gohan stepped into the center of the circle. He stripped off his shirt. His torso was a map of scars. The blast burns from Cell, the cuts from the demons, the black veins from Abaddon's essence which still pulsed faintly under his skin. He closed his eyes. He didn't power up in a scream. He powered up in a whisper. The air pressure in the room dropped instantly. Ears popped. The golden aura flared, but it wasn't pure gold anymore. It was laced with violet and static blue, the colors of magic and grace weaving through the Super Saiyan fire. Gohan raised his hands. He focused on the feeling of Goku, the warmth, the strength, the safety. He pushed. The sigils ignited. A column of light erupted from the floor, punching through the ceiling of the dungeon and up through the levels of the bunker. But the light didn't go up into the sky. It folded in on itself. A tear appeared in the air. It was a jagged vertical wound in reality, blacker than black. A wind began to blow, sucking loose papers and debris into the rift. Gohan gritted his teeth. He felt the connection. He felt a signature. It was strong. It was familiar. It was powerful. "Dad!" he screamed into the roaring wind. "Dad!" The rift widened, but the voice that answered was not Goku's. It was a laugh, a low rolling sound that vibrated in the marrow of their bones. "Not quite, little bird," the voice purred, "but I'll be your daddy if you want." Sam turned pale. He knew that voice. He had spent centuries in a cage with that voice. "Dean," Sam screamed, "shut it down. It's Lucifer." Dean lunged for the break in the circle, trying to scuff the paint, trying to break the connection. But the force field around Gohan threw him back against the wall. Gohan was locked in. He couldn't hear Sam. He was in a trance state, his mind fully extended into the void seeking the signal. He had made a fatal error in calculation. He had searched for the strongest energy source he could find, assuming it was Goku. But in the local cosmology, the strongest energy source was not in the other world. It was in the cage. Deep in the heart of hell, locked away by God himself, were two archangels, Michael and Lucifer. Their combined power was a burning sun in the spiritual dark. Gohan's ritual hadn't built a bridge to Dragon Ball. It had built a direct line to the cage. The rift pulsed. A hand made of white-hot celestial fire reached out from the darkness. It wasn't a physical hand. It was a manifestation of will. It grasped the edge of the tear, trying to pull it wider. The bunker shook. The structural supports groaned. Dust rained down. "Let me in," Lucifer whispered. His voice was inside Gohan's head now. "You're so strong. You're so empty. You need a guide. I can show you the stars. I can take you home." Gohan froze. The voice was hypnotic. It promised relief. It promised an end to the hunger. But beneath the honeyed words, Gohan sensed the malice. It was the same malice that he had felt from Cell, but ancient, cold, and infinite. This wasn't a fighter. This was a predator. "No," Gohan said. He tried to pull back. He tried to cut the flow of ki. But he couldn't. The connection was established. The cage was a vacuum. It was sucking him dry. The energy he had stolen, the ley line, the grace, the magic, was being siphoned out of him and into the prison, feeding the prisoners. "You open the door," Lucifer laughed. "You don't get to close it. You are the key." Castiel realized what was happening. The boy was acting as a living jumper cable. He was recharging the archangels. If he continued, they wouldn't just escape. They would emerge stronger than they had been at the height of the apocalypse. "Gohan!" Castiel shouted, his voice amplified by his own grace. "Sever the link. You must destroy the circle." Gohan couldn't move. He was paralyzed by the psychic assault. Lucifer was showing him images of Chi-Chi dead, of Trunks burning, of a world where Gohan had failed. The psychological torture was precise and immediate, exploiting the boy's deepest traumas. Dean saw the kid buckling. He saw the tears streaming down Gohan's face. He saw the hand of fire stretching the rift wider. A second hand appeared. Michael. They were both pulling. The cage was opening. Dean scrambled to his feet. He grabbed the only thing he had. The Colt. He knew it couldn't kill Lucifer. He knew it probably couldn't hurt Gohan. But he had to disrupt the focus. He aimed at Gohan's shoulder. "Forgive me, kid." He fired. The bullet, carved with pentagrams and forged in the fires of the original hunter, struck Gohan's shoulder. It didn't penetrate. Gohan's Kai barrier was too dense. The bullet flattened and fell to the floor. But the impact, the kinetic shock, was enough. It broke Gohan's concentration. The image of the burning world faltered. Gohan blinked. He saw Dean. He saw the fear in Dean's eyes. He realized where he was. He realized what he was doing. He roared. It was a sound of pure frustration. He didn't pull back. He pushed. He gathered every ounce of the stolen energy, every drop of magic, every wisp of grace, and he detonated it. He didn't fire a blast. He turned his body into a bomb, an omnidirectional explosion of pure rejection. Kai Kai. The explosion was silent. It was a whiteout. The light erased the shadows in the dungeon. It erased the paint on the floor. It erased the rift. The force of the blast slammed the door to the cage shut with a metaphysical slam that was heard by every psychic sensitive on Earth. The hand of fire was severed, dissolving into sparks. The connection was broken. But the energy had to go somewhere. It went into the walls. It went into the earth. And it went into the timeline. When the light faded, Gohan was on his knees. He was smoking. His skin was grey. He looked like a corpse. The bunker was silent. The warding on the walls was burnt out. The glowing symbols turned to black scorch marks. The air smelled of ozone and ancient dust. Sam and Dean coughed, waving away the smoke. They were alive. The cage was closed. But something had changed. The atmosphere felt heavier. The shadow seemed to have weight. Gohan looked up. His eyes were bleeding. Not red blood, gold blood, the ichor of the divine. He had burned through the human parts of his DNA. He was evolving again. I closed it, Gohan whispered. Yeah, Dean rasped, pulling himself up. You closed it. You okay? I don't think so, Gohan said. Before Sam could speak, a figure stepped out of the shadows in the corner of the room. He didn't appear with a flutter of wings or a puff of smoke. He simply walked out of the darkness, as if he had always been standing there. He was an old man, thin, dressed in a pristine black suit, leaning on a cane. He had a face that looked like dry parchment and eyes that held the absolute cold certainty of the end. Death, the horseman. Dean stiffened. Death. The entity ignored Dean. He walked toward Gohan. The tap of his cane on the concrete was the loudest sound in the universe. Gohan looked at the old man. His instinct screamed. This was not a monster. This was not a god. This was a constant, a fundamental law of reality given form. Gohan felt a fear he had never felt before. The fear of an ant facing a boot. You have made a mess, Death said. His voice was dry like autumn leaves. Gohan couldn't speak. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't work. Death stopped in front of him. He looked down at the boy with a mixture of curiosity and distaste. You are not supposed to be here, Death said. You are a fiction in this reality. A story from a comic book brought to life by a cosmic accident. But you are here, and you are eating my garden. Death poked Gohan's chest with the tip of his cane. It hurt more than Cell's punches. It felt like his soul was being touched by ice. You tried to open the cage, Death continued. You failed, but in doing so, you cracked the foundation. The energy you released, it has shifted the axis. I just wanted to go home, Gohan whispered. There is no home for you anymore, Death said simply. The bridge is burned. You are part of this ecosystem now, and you are a predator that has no natural enemies. That is a problem for me. Dean stepped forward. Don't touch him. Death turned his head slowly. Dean Winchester, as always punching above your weight class, I am not here to reap him. Not yet. Reaping him would be complicated. He is too heavy. His soul is too dense. It would clog the machinery. Death looked back at Gohan. I am here to give you a choice, little abomination. Gohan looked up. A choice. You have disrupted the balance, Death said. The angels are in disarray. Hell is terrified. The natural order is crumbling because you exist. You have two options. Option 1, I touch you and I unmake you. I take the time to unravel your atoms one by one. It will be unpleasant, and it might destroy this state, but it will be done. Sam stepped up beside Dean. They stood ready to die for the kid. Death noted this with a flicker of amusement. Option 2, Death said. You work for me. The room went deadly silent. Work for you? Gohan asked. The Reapers are overwhelmed, Death said. The apocalypse created a backlog, and now with the chaos you have caused, ghosts are not crossing over. Spirits are trapped. Monsters are rising. I need a janitor. Someone strong enough to force the dead to die. Someone who can walk into a nest of vampires and simply erase them. Death leaned in. You want to protect this world? Then clean it up. Be my pale rider. Be the executioner. In exchange, I will not kill your friends, and I will allow you to exist. Gohan looked at the Winchesters. He saw the horror on their faces. Working for Death meant becoming a killer. Not a defender, a killer. But he looked at the cracks in the walls. He felt the trembling of the earth. He knew Death was right. He was the cause. He was the disease. If he fought Death now, he would lose. And Dean and Sam would die. Gohan slowly got to his knees. He bowed his head. I accept, Gohan said. Dean shouted, No! But the word was cut off. Death smiled. It was a thin, terrible smile. He reached out and touched Gohan's forehead. A mark burned itself into Gohan's skin. Not the mark of Cain. Something older. A scythe. A brand of ownership. The pain was blinding. Gohan didn't scream. He endured. His aura flared again, but this time the gold was gone. The blue was gone. The aura was white. Pale, bone white. The color of a shroud. Gohan stood up. The injuries from the ritual were gone. The exhaustion was gone. He felt cold, perfectly, beautifully cold. He felt the location of every dying soul on the planet. He heard the chorus of the ending. He looked at his hands. They were pale. His fingernails were black. He looked at Dean. His eyes were no longer the eyes of a child. They were old. I have work to do, Gohan said. Death nodded. Go. There is a nest of skinwalkers in Oregon. They are overdue. Gohan didn't walk to the door. He didn't fly. He stepped. One moment he was there, the next he was gone. He moved through the space between spaces, the Reaper's path. Death adjusted his cuffs. He looked at the Winchesters. He will make a fine instrument, Death said. He has the capacity for infinite violence, but the desire for peace. That creates the most efficient killers. You turned him into a monster, Dean spat. I gave him a job, Death said. Better a monster with a leash than a god without one. Death vanished, leaving the Winchesters alone in the ruin of their bunker. The small choice to open a door had led to the massive outcome of Gohan's enslavement to the concept of death. He was no longer just a lost scion. He was the reaper of the supernatural universe. The power system had been reconciled. Key was life. Gohan had just traded his life for the power of death. The balance was restored, but the cost was the soul of the hero. Gohan was now the thing that went bump in the night for the things that went bump in the night. And somewhere in the dark, Crowley was laughing because the board had just been flipped and the pieces were all falling into new and interesting places. The game was no longer about the apocalypse. It was about the harvest. And the harvester was an 11-year-old boy who just wanted his dad. The winter that fell upon the supernatural universe was not a season of snow and ice, but a season of silence. It had been 6 months since the entity known as Son Gohan had accepted the bargain with death. And in that time, the ecology of the paranormal had been dismantled with the ruthless efficiency of a machine. Gohan did not sleep. He did not eat. The mark of the scythe on his forehead pulsed with a cold white light that sustained his biological functions, replacing the need for calories with the metaphysical reaping of souls. He moved across the map as a blur of pale energy, a ghost story that the monsters told each other in the dark. The vampires in the Pacific Northwest did not hunt anymore. They hid in deep caves, starving slowly, because they knew that if they spilled a drop of human blood, the white boy would come. The werewolves of the Dakotas had broken their packs and scattered, living as drifters, terrified of the moon. The demons stayed in hell, refusing to answer the summoning rituals of desperate cultists, because the surface world had become a slaughterhouse for their kind. Dean Winchester sat on the hood of the Impala, parked on a ridge overlooking a desolate valley in Montana. The car had been fixed, the glass replaced, but the engine still had a hitch in it, a permanent limp from the exposure to Gohan's aura. Dean drank a beer that tasted like ash. He watched the valley below where a nest of shapeshifters had holed up in an abandoned copper mine. It was a formidable fortress guarded by heavy weaponry and ancient wards. It would have taken the Winchesters a week of planning and a gallon of holy water to breach. But Dean wasn't planning a siege. He was checking his watch. Sam sat in the passenger seat, the laptop open. His face was drawn, his eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. He was tracking the global supernatural activity levels. The graph was a flat line. There were no hauntings, no possessions, no monster attacks. It looked like peace, but Sam knew better. It was the quiet of a graveyard. He told Dean that the natural order was collapsing, without the monsters thinning the herd, without the fear driving human innovation, without the cycle of predator and prey. The spiritual ecosystem was stagnating. The reapers were bored. Heaven was in a panic because the soul intake was erratic. Hell was on the verge of civil war because the supply of corrupted souls had dried up. Gohan was doing his job too well. He wasn't just pruning the garden, he was salting the earth. A flash of white light illuminated the valley floor. It was silent at first. Then the sound of the impact rolled up the hill like thunder. The copper mine didn't explode. It imploded. The structural supports were vaporized in a microsecond, and the mountain collapsed in on itself, burying the shapeshifters under millions of tons of rock. There was no battle. There was no struggle. Just a flash and an execution. A moment later, the air on the ridge displaced with a sharp crack. Gohan stood before them. He looked terrible. His gi was gone, replaced by a black shroud that seemed to be woven from shadows. His hair was no longer the spiky black of a Saiyan warrior, nor the gold of a Super Saiyan. It was stark bone white, bleached by the constant channeling of Reaper energy. His eyes were entirely black, save for a single white iris, in the center of each a pupil that looked like a dying star. He didn't breathe. He didn't shiver in the biting wind. He radiated a cold so intense that frost formed on the hood of the Impala instantly. "Done," Gohan said. His voice was a rasp, a sound like stones grinding together. "They are reaped, sent to purgatory." "That was 100 shifters, Gohan," Dean said quietly. "Did you even check if they were guilty? Some shifters don't kill." "They are monsters," Gohan said. "Monsters kill. I stop them before they start. It is efficient." "It's genocide," Sam said, stepping out of the car. "You're wiping the board. You're not a hunter anymore, Gohan. You're a natural disaster." Gohan looked at Sam. There was no recognition in his eyes, no spark of the boy who had loved his father. There was only the calculation of the harvest. "I'm keeping my promise," Gohan said. "I'm cleaning your world. Why are you not happy? You are safe. No one will hurt you." "We're not safe," Dean said, sliding off the hood. "We're terrified. Of you." The words hung in the frozen air. Gohan tilted his head, the movement bird-like and unnatural. He touched the scythe mark on his forehead. "I am saving you," he whispered. "I am saving everyone. If I kill the monsters, the weak can live. That is what my father would have wanted. Your father fought to protect," Dean said. "He gave mercy. You don't know the meaning of the word anymore." "Mercy is a risk," Gohan stated. "I cannot afford risks. The universe is fragile. I hold it together by removing the stress points." Suddenly Gohan stiffened. He looked up at the sky, his white eyes narrowing. The air pressure dropped, plummeting until Dean's ears popped painfully. The silence of the winter was broken by a sound that vibrated in their teeth. A horn, a celestial war horn, blowing from the four corners of the earth. "They are here," Gohan said. "Who?" Sam asked. "Everyone," Gohan replied. The sky above Montana tore open. It wasn't a portal, it was a rupture. From the clouds descended the host of heaven, not a few squads but legions. Thousands of angels, their wings blotting out the sun, their grace shining like a blinding wall of steel. Leading them was not Raphael or Uriel, but Metatron, the scribe of God, clutching a tablet that pulsed with frantic light. Simultaneously, the ground beneath the valley split. Magma and black smoke poured out, solidifying into ranks of demons. But they were not fighting the angels. They were standing alongside them. The legions of hell, led by Crowley in a suit of red silk, marched out of the fissures. And from the shadows of the trees, from the cracks in the reality, came others. Ancient pagan gods who had been hiding for centuries. Jinn kings, the alpha vampire. Entities that hated each other with a burning passion, united by a singular, terrifying existential threat. They had come for the Reaper. Dean looked at the army. It was the Battle of Armageddon, but the sides were wrong. It was the universe versus the child. "You have to run," Dean shouted, grabbing Gohan's arm. The touch burned Dean's hand, blistering the skin with cold, but he didn't let go. "Gohan, they'll kill you." Gohan looked at the hand on his arm. He looked at the army. A faint flicker of something human passed through his eyes. "They cannot kill me," Gohan said. "I am Death's instrument, but they can break the world trying." He pulled his arm free. He floated upward, rising to meet the horde. Metatron's voice boomed, amplified by the tablet. "Son Gohan, abomination, world eater, you have violated the balance. You have starved the cosmos. By the accord of heaven and hell, you are hereby sentenced to unmaking." Crowley stepped forward on a ridge of obsidian. "Nothing personal, darling, but you're bad for business. You're eating all the profit." Gohan hovered in the center of the encirclement. He looked small against the backdrop of the combined might of the supernatural powers, but he did not look afraid. He raised his hand. The white aura exploded, expanding outward in a shockwave that turned the falling snow into steam. "Come," Gohan said. The attack was simultaneous. A barrage of angel smiting combined with demonic energy, blasts, pagan magic, and elemental fury. The sky turned into a kaleidoscope of destruction focused on the single point of the boy. The Winchesters dove behind the Impala, covering their heads as the world turned white. The ridge they were standing on disintegrated. When the light faded, Gohan was still there. He was unharmed. He had not blocked the attack. He had absorbed it. The Reaper mark on his head was glowing so brightly it was painful to look at. His body, having adapted to consuming energy, was now feeding on the war. "Is that all?" Gohan asked. He moved. It was not a fight. It was a massacre. Gohan vanished and reappeared amidst the angel legions. He didn't punch. He swiped his hand, and 100 angels fell, their grace extinguished instantly, their vessels turning to dust. He teleported to the ground and walked through the demon ranks. Every demon he passed simply ceased to exist. Their smoke sucked into the void of his aura. He was a black hole in the shape of a child. The alpha vampire charged, moving with ancient speed. Gohan caught him by the throat. "Extinct," Gohan whispered. The alpha crumbled to ash. Metatron screamed commands, trying to rally the host. Gohan appeared in front of him. He took the angel tablet from the scribe's hands. "This is just paper," Gohan said. He crushed the tablet. The explosion of divine knowledge washed over him, and he drank that too. Dean watched in horror. This wasn't a victory. This was the end. Gohan was destroying the infrastructure of the reality. If he killed the scribe, if he wiped out the host, heaven would fall. If heaven fell, the souls of humanity would have nowhere to go. They would become ghosts trapped on a dying earth. "Sam!" Dean yelled over the roar of the wind. "We have to stop him. He's not saving the world, he's eating it." "How?" Sam screamed back. "He's stronger than God right now." "We have to reach him," Dean shouted. "The kid. We have to find the kid inside the monster." Dean ran. He ran into the kill zone. He dodged falling angel blades and piles of demon ash. He ran toward the center of the storm, where Gohan stood suspended in the air, surrounded by a vortex of white fire. "Gohan!" Dean screamed. Gohan didn't hear him. The roar of the power was too loud. The voices of the billions of souls he had reaped were screaming in his mind. He was losing himself. The Saiyan drive for battle was merging with the Reaper's drive for finality. He was becoming a force of pure entropy. He prepared a blast, a white Kamehameha. He aimed it at the remaining forces of heaven and hell gathered on the horizon. If he fired it, he would scour the continent. Dean scrambled up a pile of rubble. He was 50 yards away. He couldn't get closer. The pressure was crushing his ribs. "Son Gohan," Dean roared, using the full name, using the authority of a father figure. Gohan paused. The name cut through the static. "Look at me," Dean yelled. "Look at what you're doing." Gohan turned slowly. His face was a mask of white flame. "I am winning," Gohan said. "I am finishing the fight." "You're killing everything," Dean shouted, pointing at the devastation. "Look around. There's no one left to save. You're not Goku. You're not a hero. You're just another bomb." The words hit Gohan harder than any fist. "You are not Goku." The image of his father flashed in his mind. The thumbs up, the smile, the sacrifice. Goku died to save the Earth. He didn't kill the Earth to save himself. Gohan looked at his hands. They were dripping with the grace of angels and the blood of demons. He looked at the sky, which was cracking like a broken mirror. The reality couldn't take any more. He was too heavy. He realized then the truth that death had known all along. Gohan wasn't the cure. He was the cancer. His very presence in this universe, his incompatible biology, his rapacious hunger for energy was the thing that was destroying the balance. He lowered his hands. The white Kamehameha dissipated. The silence returned. The surviving angels and demons froze watching. Gohan descended. He landed in front of Dean. The white aura receded slightly, revealing the boy beneath. He looked tired, so incredibly tired. "I can't stop," Gohan whispered. "My body, it wants more. If I stay, I will eat the sun. I can feel it calling to me." "Then don't stay," Dean said, his voice breaking. "You have to go." "I can't go home," Gohan said. "The door is closed. Lucifer is behind it." "There are other places," Sam said, running up breathless. "Places where you can't hurt anyone. Places where you can fight forever and it won't matter." Gohan looked at Sam. "Purgatory?" "No," Sam said. "Purgatory is for monsters. You're not a monster. Not yet." "The empty," Castiel said, appearing beside them. The angel was bloodied, his coat torn, but alive. "The space before creation, where angels go when they die. It is infinite nothingness. You could not fill it. You could not eat it. You would simply sleep." Gohan looked at Castiel. "Sleep. It is the only way," Castiel said. "You are a fire that is burning down the house. You must be extinguished." Gohan looked at the Winchesters. He looked at the world he had tried so hard to understand. He had failed, but in failing, he could still do one right thing. "I won't sleep," Gohan said. His voice changed, gaining a steel that hadn't been there since the Cell Games. "If I go to the empty, the entity there will wake up. It will be angry. It will come for you." "Then what?" Dean asked. "I'll fight it," Gohan said. A small, sad smile touched his lips. "I'll keep it busy, forever." Gohan stepped back. He closed his eyes. He didn't power up. He powered down. He reversed the flow of his energy. Instead of pulling the universe in, he pushed himself out. He focused on the concept of non-existence. The mark of the scythe on his forehead turned black. "Thank you," Gohan said, "for the food, for the kindness." "Gohan, don't." Dean stepped forward, tears running down his face. "We can find another way." "Goodbye, Dean," Gohan said. He flared his Kai one last time. It wasn't white. It wasn't blue. For a brief second, it was gold. Pure, warm, radiant gold. Then he imploded. There was no explosion, no shockwave. The space where Gohan stood simply inverted. A hole appeared in the fabric of the world, a swirling vortex of black viscous liquid, the shadow, the entrance to the empty. Gohan fell backward into it. He didn't scream. He looked at peace. The black liquid rose up and swallowed him, and then the hole sealed itself. The wind died. The clouds began to clear. The angels and demons looked at each other confused, their bloodlust gone. The pressure was lifted. The gravity returned to normal. Gohan was gone. Dean fell to his knees in the dirt. He stared at the spot where the kid had been. There was nothing there, just a patch of grass that was greener than the rest. Sam put a hand on Dean's shoulder. He didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Crowley brushed off his suit. He looked at the empty space. "Well," the King of Hell said softly, "that was dramatic." He snapped his fingers, and the demons vanished, returning to the pit. Metatron looked at the Winchesters. He looked terrified. He realized that they had befriended a creature that could have eaten God, and that creature had sacrificed itself for them. He gathered the host and ascended, retreating to the safety of heaven to rebuild the shattered hierarchy. The Winchesters were left alone in the valley. "He's gone," Sam said. "He's not gone," Dean said, standing up. He wiped his face. "He's fighting, somewhere in the dark. He's fighting a war so we don't have to." Dean walked to the Impala. He opened the door. He looked at the back seat where GOHAN used to sit. There was a wrapper from a burger joint tucked into the seat cushion. Dean picked it up. He held it for a moment, then put it in his pocket. "Let's go home, Sammy," Dean said. "And then what?" Sam asked. "And then we hunt," Dean said. "We do the job. We keep the balance. Because if we screw it up again," he looked up at the sky, "there's no one coming to bail us out." In the vast, infinite blackness of the empty, the cosmic entity stirred. It was ancient and it was grumpy, and it wanted to sleep. But there was a noise, a buzzing, a light. The entity opened its many eyes. Floating in the void was a small golden figure, a boy. He was glowing, illuminating the darkness that had existed for eons. "Quiet!" the entity roared, its voice shaking the nothingness. "Go to sleep." The boy smiled. He settled into a fighting stance. His aura flared, pushing back the dark. "No," GOHAN said. "I'm ready for round 2. He launched himself at the darkness. The fight would last for eternity, and for the first time in his life, Son GOHAN was perfectly content. He had found a world he couldn't break, a monster he couldn't kill, and a purpose that would never end. The supernatural universe healed. The scars on the land grew over. The legends of the White Reaper faded into myth. But in the silence between the stars, if you listened closely, you could hear the faint rhythmic thrum of a battle that kept the darkness at bay. The file remained sealed in the deepest vault of the Men of Letters bunker, marked only with a single kanji, that Sam Winchester painted by hand, using black ink and a steady brush. There is no digital record of the anomaly known as the sun. The hunters who survived those 6 months do not speak of the White Reaper in barrooms or roadhouses. It is a silence born not of respect, but of a trauma so deep it rewired the collective unconscious of the paranormal community. Vampires in the Midwest now cull their own herds, enforcing a strict population limit to avoid drawing attention from the void. Werewolf packs restrict their turning rituals. The monsters learned fear not of a hunter with a gun, but of a force that treats existence as a calorie source. They know now that the food chain has a predator above them, and though he is gone, the scar he left on the metaphysics of the earth remains visible to those with the eyes to see. The ley line in Nebraska never recovered, remaining a mile-wide circle of grey dust, where compasses spin wildly and ghosts fade into nothingness within seconds. It serves as a monument to the day the laws of physics surrendered to the will of a child. Dean Winchester still drives the Impala, but he drives slower now. He checks the rear-view mirror more often, not for cops or demons, but for a golden glow that he knows he will never see again. The brothers do not talk about him. To name him is to invite the memory of the white eyes and the cold that stopped the heart. But every year on the anniversary of the event, they drive to that valley in Montana. The copper mine is still a ruin, a testament to the day the earth swallowed the wicked. In the center of the devastation, there is a patch of grass that never dies even in the deepest winter. It is vibrant alien green, humming with a faint bioelectric resonance that repels snow and insects alike. Dean pours a drink on the earth. Sam reads a passage from a book on Zen Buddhism. They stand in the silence and listen. They say that if you tune a radio to the static between stations anywhere in North America, you can hear it. Not a voice, not a signal, but a rhythm. A low, distant thudding, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant or the sound of fists striking meat in an infinite dojo. The empty is no longer silent. The cosmic shadow does not sleep. It is engaged in a war that spans the nothingness, a chaotic, eternal brawl that keeps the darkness occupied. The universe continues to spin its axis slightly, tilted its magic slightly thinner, but it spins. The Winchesters get back in the car. They have a job to do. There are things in the dark that need killing. But they hunt with a new certainty. They know that no matter how bad it gets, no matter how hopeless the fight seems, they are just the maintenance crew. The heavy artillery isn't gone. He is just busy keeping the basement door closed. And for the first time in the history of the supernatural universe, the monsters are right to be afraid of the dark, because the dark is being hunted too.